Welcome to our US Briefing Show. Today, we're diving into some hot topics from around the globe. First up, trade tensions between China and the US are simmering in Stockholm, where top officials are discussing extending tariffs and avoiding further escalation. Despite previous tariffs and retaliations, there's hope for a deal, possibly paving the way for a Trump-Xi meeting later this year. Next, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues to grab headlines. President Trump has urged the world to step up and provide more aid, highlighting the dire situation faced by children and calling on allies like the UK and EU to contribute. With ongoing conflicts and accusations flying, the situation remains tense and heartbreaking. Finally, in the world of business, South Korean and Japanese battery companies are taking a big leap into the US market, benefiting from restrictions on Chinese firms. Companies like LG and Samsung are expanding local production, capturing over half of the EV battery market in the US, which could shake up regional trade dynamics. Please continue to stay tuned for the detailed stories. According to the South China Morning Post, despite US President Donald Trump's public insistence that China purchase more American goods, recent trade data paints a starkly different picture. Over recent months, China's imports of key US commodities such as liquefied natural gas, crude oil, and coking coal have plummeted or come to a complete halt. For instance, US LNG exports to China decreased by 66% in February and then stopped altogether from March to June, while US crude oil imports fell by 68% during the first 5 months of the year. Experts like Wang Yiwei suggest that these trade disruptions stem from escalating tensions, tariffs, and exchange rate swings, prompting both sides to adopt a cautious wait-and-see approach. As a result, traditional energy and agricultural products, categories that are more standardized and easier to substitute, are likely to be focal points in any future trade agreements, whereas complex high-tech exports face greater hurdles due to China's strategic concerns and the broader geopolitical rivalry. The Australian Broadcasting Corporation reports on President Trump's recent comments regarding the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, emphasizing his call for increased international aid. Standing at Turnberry in Scotland, Trump highlighted the United States' contribution of $60 million in humanitarian assistance and urged other nations, including the UK and European Union, to do more. He criticized Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's assertion that there is no starvation in Gaza, asserting instead that children there look very hungry. Trump expressed concern over the ongoing suffering, citing reports of mass starvation and the death of Palestinians from hunger, including children. He also mentioned conversations with Israeli officials and suggested that Hamas's recent hardened stance on negotiations has complicated efforts to secure a ceasefire and the release of hostages, further intensifying the humanitarian and political crisis. Finally, the Associated Press details the ongoing diplomatic efforts in Stockholm where US and Chinese officials are engaged in their third round of trade talks this year. The meetings involve US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng, aiming to extend the current tariff pause and reduce trade tensions. These discussions follow earlier negotiations in Geneva and London, and analysts see them as a potential prelude to a summit between President Trump and President Xi Jinping. The US seeks to lower tariffs and address its significant trade deficit with China, which reached nearly $900 billion last year, while China emphasizes the importance of more consensus and cooperation to avoid misunderstandings. The outcome of these talks could influence future trade policies and help stabilize the fragile economic relations between the world's two largest economies. Deutsche Welle vividly illustrates how recent trade agreements between the United States and Southeast Asian nations like Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines are dramatically reshaping regional and global trade dynamics. These countries have committed to nearly eliminating tariffs on US exports, in exchange for increased American purchases of their goods, including energy, agricultural products, and industrial commodities. While this shift risks undermining European exports, particularly in sectors like mechanical engineering and chemicals, analysts suggest that the US's lower tariffs could indirectly benefit Europe by prompting Southeast Asian nations to also lower tariffs on European goods. The recent US-EU trade deal, which sets a 15% tariff on EU exports, underscores a broader strategic recalibration, as European countries navigate the complexities of maintaining their market share amid shifting US-Asia trade policies. The negotiations and agreements are fostering a nuanced landscape where regional trade diversification and strategic leverage could ultimately strengthen the EU's hand in future free trade negotiations, especially with Southeast Asian nations eager to balance their trade relationships. Nikkei Asia vividly captures the surge of South Korean and Japanese battery companies in the US market, as they capitalize on the tightening restrictions on Chinese competitors. Companies like LG Energy Solution, Samsung SDI, and Panasonic are rapidly expanding their local production capacities, establishing new factories and partnerships to meet the soaring demand for energy storage and electric vehicle batteries. These Asian firms are strategically positioning themselves in the rapidly growing U.S. energy storage sector, driven by the increasing deployment of batteries for data centers and electrification projects. Meanwhile, Chinese battery manufacturers face mounting challenges due to U.S. policies aimed at reducing Chinese influence, including stricter export controls and restrictions on Chinese-owned companies receiving tax credits. These measures have led to delays and re-evaluations of Chinese investments in the U.S., shrinking their market share and intensifying the geopolitical competition in the clean energy sector. As a result, South Korean and Japanese firms are poised to expand their influence, although ongoing trade uncertainties and policy shifts could still pose hurdles for their long-term dominance. Yahoo US provides an energetic update on Mike Collins' recent bid for the Georgia Senate, signaling a significant political development in the American South. Meanwhile, Nikkei Asia offers a compelling narrative on the strategic expansion of South Korean and Japanese battery giants amidst a landscape of tightening US-China tensions. These Asian companies are not only increasing their market share but also investing heavily in local manufacturing to circumvent Chinese dominance and U.S. restrictions. Their focus on energy storage solutions and electric vehicle batteries aligns with the broader push for supply chain independence and technological sovereignty, driven by policies from Washington that aim to curb Chinese technological influence. However, the evolving regulatory environment, including tariffs, export controls, and political uncertainties, could influence the trajectory of these companies' growth. The story paints a picture of fierce geopolitical competition, where economic strategy, technological innovation, and trade policies collide, shaping the future landscape of the global clean energy and automotive industries. The South China Morning Post reports that top Chinese and American officials have commenced their third round of trade negotiations in Stockholm, aiming to extend their tariff truce and address ongoing issues such as tariffs related to fentanyl. The talks, held at the historic Rosenbad building, are part of a series of efforts to de-escalate trade tensions that have seen duties rise dramatically since President Trump's administration initiated a tariff blitz against China. Both sides are reportedly seeking to prolong the current tariff suspension by 3 months, with Beijing hoping to clarify the U.S. stance on fentanyl tariffs, which China considers unfair. Meanwhile, the U.S. appears to be cautious about escalating tensions, possibly to facilitate a future meeting between President Trump and Xi Jinping. The negotiations are expected to last several days, emphasizing mutual benefits and the importance of maintaining a stable, long-term relationship amid complex issues like trade, tariffs, and strategic concerns. In the Associated Press's Ground Game newsletter, the focus shifts to the alarming rise of AI-driven deepfake technology that threatens national security and corporate integrity. Scammers are increasingly employing realistic synthetic videos and audio to impersonate high-profile officials, including President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, to manipulate diplomatic and economic interactions. These deepfakes pose significant risks, from leaking sensitive diplomatic discussions to corporate espionage, where hackers impersonate CEOs to extract confidential information. Meanwhile, Trump continues his diplomatic efforts through informal channels such as golf diplomacy, hosting meetings with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer at Trump-owned golf courses, while Vice President Vance promotes the GOP's controversial new tax law across Ohio. These stories highlight a world where digital deception and political maneuvering intertwine, underscoring the urgent need for robust laws, digital literacy, and technological defenses against the pervasive threat of AI-generated misinformation. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.
Morning coffee, fresh off the press, reading headlines, feeling to know. Never stopping, always go. Scrolling, swiping, reading on. Daylight breaks into dawn. Headlines and headlines, can't get it.